What if I told you that the very thing you think is protecting you is actually destroying you from within? What if your compassion, your need for comfort, your desire to fit in, what if these aren't virtues, but chains that keep you weak? Friedrich Nietzsche, one of history's most controversial philosophers, believed that weakness is not just a personal failing. It's a disease that spreads through society like wildfire. And today, we're going to explore his radical prescription for killing that weakness once and for all. But fair warning, this isn't going to be comfortable. Nietzsche's medicine tastes bitter because it forces you to confront the lies you tell yourself every single day. Friedrich Nietzsche wasn't just a philosopher. He was a psychological surgeon, cutting through the comfortable illusions that most people use to navigate life. Born in 1844 in Prussia, Nietzsche spent his life questioning everything society held sacred. He looked at the world around him and saw something terrifying: the slow decay of human potential. People were becoming softer, weaker, more dependent on others for their sense of worth and meaning. Nietzsche called this phenomenon the herd mentality, the tendency for humans to cluster together like sheep, following the same paths, thinking the same thoughts, avoiding anything that might challenge their comfortable mediocrity. But here's what made Nietzsche different from other critics of his time. He didn't just point out the problem. He offered a solution, a brutal, uncompromising path to strength that he called becoming who you are. So what exactly did Nietzsche mean by weakness? It's not what you might think. He wasn't talking about physical frailty or lack of courage in the traditional sense. Nietzsche identified weakness as something far more insidious. It's the inability to create your own values. It's living your life according to rules and beliefs that were handed to you by others, without ever questioning whether they serve your highest potential. Weak people, in Nietzsche's view, are reactive. They spend their lives responding to what others expect of them, seeking approval, avoiding conflict, choosing safety over growth. The weak person looks outside themselves for validation. They need others to tell them they're good, they're worthy, they're on the right path. This external dependency creates what Nietzsche called slave morality, a system of values based on resentment toward those who dare to be different. Think about it. How many decisions do you make each day based on what others might think? How often do you hold back your true thoughts because they might offend someone? How frequently do you choose the easy path over the path that would make you stronger? This is the weakness Nietzsche wanted to destroy, not through force or aggression, but through a complete transformation of how you see yourself and your place in the world. Nietzsche's vision of human potential centered on what he called the Übermensch, often translated as Superman or Overman. But this isn't about superhuman powers or dominance over others. The Übermensch is someone who has moved beyond the conventional categories of good and evil that society uses to control behavior. They create their own moral code based on what enhances life, growth, and authentic self-expression. This person has killed the weakness inside them by refusing to be defined by external standards. They don't need society's approval because they've learned to approve of themselves. They don't fear judgment because they've become their own judge. The Übermensch faces life's challenges head-on, not because they're fearless, but because they've learned that growth only comes through struggle. They embrace difficulty as a sculptor embraces marble, raw material for creating something beautiful and strong. But becoming an Übermensch isn't about rejecting all social connections or becoming a selfish monster. It's about engaging with the world from a position of strength rather than weakness. Giving rather than taking, creating rather than consuming. One of Nietzsche's most powerful insights was his distinction between slave morality and master morality. Understanding this difference is crucial for killing weakness within yourself. Slave morality is the morality of the weak. It's built on resentment toward those who have what you want. It glorifies suffering, victimhood, and self-denial. It tells you that being meek, humble, and self-sacrificing makes you virtuous. But Nietzsche saw through this facade. Slave morality isn't really about virtue. It's about making weakness feel noble. It's a way for people who lack the courage to pursue their own greatness to feel superior to those who do. Master morality, on the other hand, is the morality of creators and innovators. It celebrates strength, beauty, excellence, and authentic self-expression. It doesn't glorify suffering, but sees it as a necessary part of growth. Someone operating from master morality doesn't need to tear others down to feel good about themselves. They're too busy building their own greatness to waste time on resentment. The crucial point here is that these aren't fixed categories based on social class or birth. You can choose which morality to embrace. The question is, will you choose the path of the victim or the path of the creator? At the core of Nietzsche's philosophy lies what he called the will to power, the fundamental drive that motivates all living things. But again, this isn't about dominating others or accumulating external power. The will to power is your deepest desire to grow, to overcome obstacles, to become more than you currently are. It's the force that pushes you to develop your talents, to face your fears, to create something meaningful with your life. Weak people suppress their will to power, afraid of what they might become if they fully embraced their potential. They worry about standing out, about making others uncomfortable, about failing in spectacular ways. But Nietzsche argued that suppressing your will to power is like trying to dam a river. The energy has to go somewhere. Usually, it turns inward as self-hatred, depression, or resentment toward others who have the courage to pursue their dreams. The path to strength involves channeling your will to power constructively. Instead of using your energy to tear others down or to make excuses for your limitations, you direct it toward continuous self-improvement and creative expression. This doesn't mean becoming ruthless or selfish. True power, in Nietzsche's sense, is generative. It creates value, beauty, and meaning, not just for yourself, but for the world around you. So how do you actually kill the weakness inside you? Nietzsche didn't provide a step-by-step manual, but we can extract practical principles from his philosophy. First, stop seeking external validation. Every time you look to others for approval, you're feeding your weakness. Start making decisions based on your own judgment, even if others disagree. Second, embrace discomfort. Weakness thrives in comfort zones. Deliberately put yourself in challenging situations that force you to grow. Take risks that scare you, but align with your values. Third, question everything you've been taught about right and wrong. Don't accept moral rules just because they're traditional or popular. Develop your own ethical framework based on what enhances life and growth. Fourth, stop making excuses. Weak people always have reasons why they can't pursue their dreams or overcome their limitations. Strong people find ways to make things happen despite obstacles. Fifth, cultivate what Nietzsche called amor fati, love of fate. Instead of resenting your circumstances, learn to see every challenge as an opportunity for growth and self-discovery. One of the most toxic forms of weakness is resentment, the bitter anger that comes from focusing on what others have that you lack. Nietzsche saw resentment as a poison that slowly destroys everything valuable about human nature. Resentful people spend their energy cataloging injustices and inequalities, instead of working to improve their own situation. They develop elaborate justifications for why their failures are really someone else's fault. But here's the brutal truth: no one owes you anything. The world doesn't care about your feelings or your sense of fairness. The only question that matters is what you're going to do with the circumstances you've been given. Killing weakness means taking full responsibility for your life, even for things that aren't technically your fault. You might not be responsible for what happens to you, but you're always responsible for how you respond. This shift from victim consciousness to creator consciousness is perhaps the most important transformation you can make. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" start asking, "How can I use this to become stronger?" Weak people live by borrowed values, beliefs, and principles they've absorbed from family, culture, or religion without ever questioning whether these values serve their highest good. Strong people create their own value systems based on deep, self-knowledge, and honest reflection about what kind of life they want to live. This doesn't mean rejecting all traditional values, but it does mean choosing consciously rather than accepting passively. Creating your own values requires brutal honesty about who you really are, not who you think you should be. It means identifying your authentic desires, talents, and aspirations without filtering them through other people's expectations. This process is terrifying because it removes all the external supports you've been using to make decisions. You can't blame your parents, your culture, or your circumstances when you're consciously choosing your own path. But this terror is also liberation. When you create your own values, you become the author of your own life story instead of just a character in someone else's narrative. Nietzsche proposed a powerful thought experiment called eternal recurrence. Imagine that you had to live your exact same life over and over again for eternity, with every detail repeated exactly. Would you embrace this fate, or would it fill you with horror? This test reveals whether you're living authentically or just going through the motions. If the thought of eternal recurrence terrifies you, it's because you're not living in alignment with your deepest values. You're wasting your one precious life on activities and relationships that don't truly matter to you. But if you can honestly say you would choose your life again, even with all its struggles and failures, then you're living with the kind of authenticity and purpose that Nietzsche admired. Use this test to evaluate your choices. Before making any major decision, ask yourself, if I had to repeat this choice for eternity, would I still make it? This simple question can cut through all the rationalizations and social expectations that usually cloud your judgment. Nietzsche famously declared that God is dead, meaning that traditional sources of meaning and morality were losing their power in the modern world. Many people interpret this as nihilism, but Nietzsche saw it as an opportunity. When external authorities lose their credibility, you're forced to create meaning for yourself. This is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because you can no longer rely on ready-made answers. Liberating because you become the architect of your own purpose. The weak response to meaninglessness is despair or escape into distractions. The strong response is to see it as raw material for creation. Instead of mourning the death of old certainties, you can build new ones based on your authentic self-understanding. This doesn't mean your values are arbitrary or purely subjective. They're grounded in your deepest nature and your honest assessment of what enhances life and growth. They're real and binding for you, even if they're not universal. Perhaps the greatest test of whether you've killed your weakness is your willingness to stand alone when necessary. Weak people need constant social validation and approval. They'll compromise their deepest values to avoid rejection or conflict. Strong people, while valuing genuine relationships, are willing to be unpopular when their integrity demands it. They understand that authentic connections can only be built on a foundation of honest self-expression. This doesn't mean being needlessly confrontational or insensitive to others' feelings. It means being true to yourself first, and then finding ways to connect with others from that position of authenticity. The courage to stand alone is also the courage to stand with others when they need support. Paradoxically, people who don't need approval are often the most capable of giving and receiving genuine love. Nietzsche didn't glorify suffering for its own sake, but he recognized that growth often requires moving through difficult experiences rather than around them. The weak person tries to avoid all pain and discomfort, but this avoidance actually creates more suffering in the long run. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you make yourself weaker. Every time you face a challenge head-on, you become stronger, regardless of whether you technically succeed or fail. The key is to approach suffering with the right attitude. Instead of seeing it as evidence that life is unfair or that you're a victim, see it as the price of admission to a more meaningful existence. This perspective transforms your relationship with difficulty. Problems become puzzles to solve. Obstacles become opportunities to develop new capabilities. Failures become valuable feedback about what doesn't work. True confidence doesn't come from external achievements or other people's opinions. It comes from knowing that you can handle whatever life throws at you. This kind of confidence is built through deliberately facing your fears and proving to yourself that you're stronger than you thought. Start small. Identify minor fears or discomforts and practice moving through them consciously. Have that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Try that creative project you're afraid might fail. Speak up in situations where you usually stay silent. Each time you act, despite fear, you add another layer to your confidence. You begin to trust yourself in deeper ways. You realize that even if things don't go as planned, you have the resources to adapt and learn. This self-trust becomes unshakable because it's based on evidence rather than wishful thinking. You know you can handle challenges because you've handled them before. While Nietzsche emphasized individual strength and authenticity, he wasn't advocating for complete isolation from others. True strength actually enhances your ability to form meaningful relationships and contribute to society. When you're no longer desperate for approval, you can engage with others more honestly and generously. When you're not threatened by other people's success, you can celebrate their achievements and learn from their strengths. Strong people attract other strong people, creating communities of mutual support and challenge. They become leaders not through force or manipulation, but through the magnetic power of authentic self-expression. Your journey toward killing weakness inside yourself ultimately serves not just your own growth, but the elevation of everyone around you. By refusing to settle for mediocrity, you give others permission to pursue their own greatness. Friedrich Nietzsche's message is both simple and revolutionary. The weakness inside you is not a fixed part of your nature. It's a choice you make every time you seek external validation. Avoid challenges or settle for less than your highest potential. Killing this weakness doesn't happen overnight. It's a daily practice of choosing courage over comfort, authenticity over approval, and growth over stagnation. It requires the kind of brutal honesty that most people spend their lives avoiding. But the reward is nothing less than becoming fully yourself. Not the version of yourself that others expect or approve of, but the version that represents your deepest values and highest aspirations. The question isn't whether you're capable of this transformation. You are. The question is whether you're willing to pay the price. Are you ready to stop making excuses and start making changes? Are you prepared to face the discomfort that comes with growth? Your weak self will give you 100 reasons why you should wait, why you're not ready, why it's too risky. But your strong self knows the truth. The perfect moment will never come. There is only now, and the choice you make in this moment. The weakness inside you has had its turn. Now it's time for your strength to speak. What will you choose?